welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my series reading and reviewing the books of Charles Fort, currently on the Book of the Damned. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And there are many ways to support the show. You can always share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. You can sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. You can also check out the merchandise store where you can find all kinds of shirts and other items with designs made by friends of the show. Also, please check out the links in every episode description for other friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of the show on Saturdays when she's able to make it, and also Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows as well as my own, 24/7 online for free. So it's been a little while, excuse me, since I have done one of these shows. So if I seem a little bit out of practice, that is why. Um, but I've been wanting to get back to this for a while because I really have enjoyed it, and just got busy with the Halloween and October and all that, and so yeah. But just a few things to keep in mind as I get into this. Again, I'm reading this book word for word, so keep in mind there will be things that Charles Fort puts down in his book that you and or I may not agree with, whether it's really all kinds of things. And so those are the words I'm reading are from Charles Fort, not my own. And also, I will mispronounce things as I'm reading, just because words are hard. And he also has words from other languages in here from time to time. So, and he also has a very, to me anyway, very distinct writing style. So, I will be making mistakes, and I apologize for that. Um, but that is how that is. So, but yeah. So let me get back into the file here, this book here. You can find all these books as well online at this point and various places. Um, or if you want to listen to me read through all of this, you can go back to the show archive and just you'll notice that all of these shows for these reviews have basically the same title, if not the same title. So the episode numbers will just be different. But anyway, let me get back to the file here. We may end up rereading a little bit here because I have the page marked, but not the exact line marked where I left off at. So, um, so for those that listened to the previous episode and then this one, as far as when they come out, I apologize for that. Anyway, so continuing on. Let's scoot closer to this. There we go. Okay. In the geographical vagueness of a mainland, the explanation, quotation marks, up from one place and down in another, quotation marks, is always good and is never overworked until the instances are massed as they are in this book. But upon this occasion, in the relatively small area of Jamaica, there was no whirlwind possible. Or, quotation marks, there in the first place, quotation marks, bobs up. Monthly Weather Review, August 1898-363. That the government meteorologist, there we go, if I can say words, had investigated, had reported that a tree had been struck by lightning and that small water-worn pebbles had been found near the tree. but that similar pebbles could be found all over Jamaica. Monthly Weather Review, September 1915-446. Professor Fassig, and again, I apologize for not saying that name right, gives an account of a fall of hail that occurred in Maryland, June 22nd, 1915. Hailstones the size of baseballs, in quotation marks, not at all uncommon, in quotation marks. An interesting, in quotation marks again, an interesting but unconfirmed account stated that small pebbles were found at the center of some of the larger hail gathered at Annapolis. The young man who related the story offered to produce the pebbles, but has not done so. Quotation marks. A footnote. And then quotation marks again. Since writing this, the author states that he has received some of the pebbles. Close quotation marks. When a young man, quotation marks, produces, quotation marks, pebbles, that's as convincing as anything else I've ever of. Heard of. Though no more convincing than if having told of ham sandwiches falling from the sky, he should produce, again in quotation marks, ham sandwiches. If this reluctance, again in quotation marks, be admitted by us, we correlate it with a datum reported by a Weather Bureau observer, signifying that whether the pebbles had been somewhere aloft a long time or not, some of the hailstones that fell with them had been. The datum is that some of these hailstones were composed of from 20 to 25 layers of alternately let me see layers alternately of clear ice and snow ice. In orthodox terms, I argue that a fair-sized hailstone falls from the clouds with velocity sufficient to warm it so that it would not take on even one layer of ice. To put on 20 layers of ice, I conceive of something that had not fallen at all, but had rolled somewhere at a leisurely rate for a long time. We now have a commonplace datum that is familiar in two respects. Little symmetric objects of metal that fell at Orenburg, Russia, September 1824. Philosophical Magazine 4-8-463. A second fall of these objects at Orenburg, Russia, January 25th, 1825. Quarterly Journal of the Royal Institute, 1828-1-447. I now think of the disc of Tarbes, Tarbes, but when first I came upon these data, I was impressed only with recurrence because the objects of Orenburg were described as crystals of pyrites or sulfate of iron. I had no notion of metallic objects that might have been shaped or molded by means other than crystallization until I came to Arago's account of these occurrences. And there's a word there I don't know how to say, 11-644. Here the analysis gives 70% red oxide of iron and sulfur and loss by ignition 5 It seems to me acceptable that iron with considerably less than 5% sulfur in it is not iron pyrites. Then little rusty iron objects, shaped by some other means, have fallen, 4 months apart, at the same place. M. Arago expresses astonishment at this phenomenon of recurrence so familiar to us. Altogether, I find opening before us vistas of heresies to which I, for one, must shut my eyes. I have always been in sympathy with the dogmatists and exclusionists. That is plain in our opening lines. That to seem to be is falsely and arbitrarily and dogmatically to exclude. It is only that exclusionists who are good in the 19th century are evil in the 20th century. Constantly we feel a merging away into infinitude, but that this book shall approximate to form, or that our data shall approximate to organization, or that we shall approximate to intelligibility, we have to call ourselves back constantly from wandering off into infinitude. The thing that we do, however, is to make our own outline, or the difference between what we include and what we exclude, vague. The crux here, and the limit beyond which we may not go very much, is acceptance that there is a region that we call the Super Sargasso Sea, not yet fully accepted, but a provisional position that has received a great deal of support. But it is a part of this earth, and does it revolve with and over this earth? Or does it flatly overlie, there we go, this earth, not revolving with and over this earth? That this earth does not revolve, and is not round or roundish at all, but is continuously with the rest of its system, so that if one could break away from the traditions of the geographers, one might walk and come to Mars, and then find Mars continuous with Jupiter. I suppose some day such queries will sound absurd. The thing will be so obvious, because it is very difficult for me to conceive of little metallic objects hanging precisely over a small town in Russia for 4 months, if revolving unattached with a revolving earth. It may be that something aimed at that town, and then later took another shot. These are speculations that seem to me to be evil relatively to these early years in the 20th century. Just now, I accept that this earth is not round, of course, that is very old fashioned, but roundish, or at least that it has what is called form of its own and does revolve upon its axis, and in an orbit around the sun. I only accept these old traditional notions, and that above it are regions of suspension that revolves with it, from which objects fall by disturbances of various kinds, and then later fall again in the same place. Monthly Weather Review, May 1884-134. Report from the Signal Service observer at Bismarck, Dakota, that at 9 o'clock in the evening of May 22nd, 1884, sharp sounds were heard throughout the city caused by a fall of flinty stones striking against windows. 15 hours later, another fall of flinty stones occurred at Bismarck. So that's my spot. There is no report of stones having fallen anywhere else. This is a thing of the ultra damned. All editors of scientific publications read the monthly excuse me, weather review and frequently copy from it. The noise made by the stones of Bismarck rattling against those windows may be in a language that aviators will someday interpret, but it was a noise entirely surrounded by silence. Of this ultra damned thing, there is no mention, findable by me, in any other publication. So I just want to pause there. That's amazing. One mention of this one thing um, in all of the journals because it is just so out of the ordinary to people that they just won't even consider it. Excuse me. Anyway, going back to the reading here, the size of some hailstones has worried many meteorologists, but not textbook meteorologists. I know of no more serene occupation than that of writing textbooks, though writing for the war cry of the Salvation Army may be equally unadventurous. In the drowsy tranquility of a textbook, we easily and unintelligently read of dust particles around which icy rain forms, hailstones in their fall, then increasing by accretion. But in the meteorological journals, we read often of air spaces nucleating hailstones. But it's the size of the things. Dip a marble in icy water. Dip and dip and dip it. If you're a resolute dipper, you will, after a while, have an object the size of a baseball. But I think I think a thing could fall from the moon in that length of time. Also, the strata of them. The Maryland hailstones are unusual, but a dozen strata have often been counted. Farrell gives an instance of 13 strata. I guess that means layers. Such considerations led Professor Shridoff to argue that some hailstones are not and cannot be presented in this Earth's atmosphere. I'm sorry, be generated in this Earth's atmosphere. So let me repeat that. This professor uh, argued that some hailstones are not and cannot be generated in this Earth's atmosphere, that they come from somewhere else. Now, in a relative existence, nothing can of itself be either attractive or repulsive. Its effects are functions of its associations or implications. Many of our data have been taken from very conservative scientific sources. It was not until their discordant implications or irreconcilabilities with the system were perceived that excommunication was pronounced against them. Professor Sridov's paper was read before the British Association. Uh, let me see. I'm not sure about that word. I always forget that word. 1882, page 453. Receipt, I guess, maybe. Receipt. The implication and the repulsiveness of the implication to the smug and tight little exclusionists of 1882, though we hold out that they were functioning well and ably relatively to 1882, that there is water, oceans or lakes and ponds, or rivers of it, that there is water away from, and yet not far remote from, this earth's atmosphere and gravitation, the pain of it, that the smug little system of 1882 would be ousted from its reposefulness, a whole new science to learn, the science of supergeography. And science is a turtle that says that its own shell encloses all things. So the members of the British Association, to some of them, Professor Sridov's ideas were like slaps on the back of an environment denying turtle. To some of them, his heresy was like an offering of meat, raw and dripping, to milk fed lambs. Some of them bleated like lambs, and some of them turtled like turtles. We used to crucify, but now we ridicule, or, in the loss of vigor of all progress, the spike has etherealized into the laugh. Let's see, okay. Sir William Thomson ridiculed the heresy with the phantomosities of his era. Let's see, okay. I think I can get through. That all bodies, such as hailstones, if away from this Earth's atmosphere, would have to move at planetary velocity, which would be positively reasonable if the pronouncements of Isaac, Sir Isaac were anything but articles of faith. I'm sorry, Saint Isaac. That a hailstone falling through this Earth's atmosphere with planetary velocity would perform 13,000 times as much work as would raise an equal weight of water 1 degree centigrade, and therefore never fall in a hailstone at all, be more than melted, super volatilized. And I think that we're going to stop there for the next paragraph here because the next one is good length and it actually goes on to the next page. So we're still talking about falling objects here and falling stones, falling metals, and yeah, we'll continue this with the next episode in the series. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.